Welcome back to our Blender to HitFilm Masterclass. We've walked you through the interface, learned how to texture, apply detail, and composite your model. Today we're going to learn some basics in physics and simulations. This is going to cover some more advanced tools in Blender, so we advise you go check out our previous tutorials if you haven't done so already. I'm excited for this one, so let's get into it. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using our uncut container from tutorial 2. This is our simple cube with textures projected. This is because we're needing to keep the simulation as simple to calculate as possible. You can use your detailed model, but for the purposes of speed and saving memory, I'll be remaining with this version. First up, we're going to be needing a mesh to crush our container. This can either be a cube or a sphere. I myself will be going with a cube to keep the crushing force a straight line. Press Shift and A to bring up the Add menu, enter Mesh, and select an object to represent your force. Keep the object selected and scale it up to be larger than your container. Let's switch the render view to wireframe to see what we're going to be doing. We haven't touched on modifiers before, but we can access the properties from this wrench icon. Modifiers are procedural effects for applying to your object to help deform, build, and simulate. To add some strength to our force, add a solidify modifier, and dial up the thickness. As we're in wireframe view, you can see the effect it's having. We don't need it too thick, just enough to make our mesh reinforced. Cool, we can now hit apply. Now we have our crushing force ready, we need to animate the motion. Another new area for us. The icon above the modifier is the Object Properties tab. If we enter this, we can see the position, scale, and rotation values of our crusher. By going beside the lock, this dot will allow us to add a keyframe. I'm just going to add some on the scale properties for this tutorial, but see what you can get from altering the other values. Experiment. I'll jump ahead in the timeline to about frame 100, and now alter the values till it makes a small volume for our container. We don't want to crush it into too small of an area just in case it causes any problems breaking the mesh during simulation. Now I'll add another keyframe to confirm the animation's endpoint. Scrub through the timeline or have a playthrough to view your motion. I'm happy with this, so I'll hop over to the Physics Property tab, this little planet looking one. Blender has a really easy collection of preset physics ready for your models. For this crusher, we're going to be using collision. Now let's prep our container. First, we need to create more faces for our simulation to work with. Select your model and enter Edit mode, and hit A to select everything. Right click and select Subdivide. If we now head down to this tab and open it up, we can increase the number of cuts. The more you have, the more realistic simulation you'll have, but this will also increase your memory size and bake time. I went with 50 cuts. Returning to the physics property window, let's enable cloth. Might be thinking this is an odd choice, but this is to help simulate our crumpling. First we need to turn off the gravity, head into the field weights dropdown and decrease the gravity value to 0. Now for the compression. Go into the collisions tab and enable self collisions. This will allow the model to go in on itself. Increase the friction value to its maximum. This will stop it being like actual cloth and resist a little. Makes it think it can handle the pressure like a tough guy. Switch back into object mode and let's give this a playthrough.
Moments later.
Looks good, though of course it's very slow. Once you're happy with the simulation, it'll need to be baked in order to render and play through correctly. This is done through the cache dropdown. Let's bake it. Depending on your settings and animation, this may take some time, so make yourself a cup of tea. Our animation is now locked in. Should you change your mind and want to alter the settings, you can delete the baked data and redo it at any time. With the bake done, we can delete our crusher object, select it and hit X to delete. Now switching into render mode, you may see that the resolution may not be too good for this model anymore. Just to help smooth it out, head to the Modifiers tab and find Subdivision Surface. Yeah, that's it, you've crushed it! As something like this would be a huge file to export as a 3D object, we should render this out as an animation. Bring up the Add menu and select a camera followed by a light, moving them both into suitable positions. Psst. To take a look at your camera view, you can hit 0 on the number pad. Let's say this is the scene I want. To render this out, we'll go to the Export Properties tab here, alter the resolution, duration, frame rate, and settings we want, but more importantly, I'll make sure the format is set to PNG and color to RGBA. Select the folder icon and create a spot for your file destination. Bear in mind that this will be an image sequence, so I'd always suggest making a new folder for it specifically. Above the output properties is the render engine settings. The default engine is Eevee. We'll be sticking with this for this export. As a quick overview, we'll be adding a couple of options to add more detail to our render. Personally, I tend to enable ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, and motion blur. For all of these, allow more depth to shadows and reflective highlights. Let us know if you want a more in-depth tutorial on the render settings down in the comment section. To preview a still of our render, we can hit F12 on the keyboard. A new window will load up. At the moment, our image is loading with a background. We need it transparent for compositing later. To change this, exit this window and enter the Film drop-down and enable Transparent. If we take a look again, we've now fixed it. To render out the entire animation, we can either go to the Render tab and hit Render Animation, or by using the shortcut Ctrl and F12. Let it do its thing, make another cup of tea, and when complete, jump into HitFilm and import by using the Import Image Sequence option. You can now crush containers with your mind! That's it for this masterclass. Thank you so much for joining us. I know firsthand how scary learning 3D can be, so I hope that this was a fun and enjoyable experience for you and you're excited to continue. If you have any questions or requests for things to learn in Blender in future, let us know in the comment section down below. To see more from us, our social media handle is @FXhome_official. We do weekly VFX prompts for you to put your skills to the test and win some amazing prizes. So get involved. Subscribe to avoid missing out on future tutorials, and we will see you next time.